everyone, Loremaster of Sotek here with a replay for you. So as many of you know, a few weeks back I participated in the Everchosen Invitational tournament, the second one. I was also in the first one. And in the second one, I had luck to go up against Romulandawg, who is justly considered probably one of the best players in the game. He ended up making it to the finals of this tournament. Spoilers, he beat me. But in our best of 3 series, there was one game that, at least for me, and it seems many people who were watching the stream of the tournament, was a rather outstanding match. And a lot of people seem to have been asking what was going through my head during it, so I thought I would tell you. First of all, Army Comp, and we'll just kind of slap into it. So I've basically just got 2 units of zombies, 5 units of Grave Guard, 2 with great weapons in the center, shield and Sternsman on the outside. I like to put my shields on the outside so they're more likely to absorb missile fire. And then I've got Kimmler behind this unit of Grave Guard. That way, if for some reason he's shooting something at me, I can hide among them. I've got the Claw of Nagash, which is the Regiment of Renown Mortis engine that also has a chilling aura and slowing effect. And I've got 3 units of Spearmen, because I was anticipating Dragon Ogres and Chaos Knights, which they're not amazing at dealing with, but they'll at least hold them down. I then have a Black Coach because thanks to its very impressive armor piercing and anti-infantry bonus, it actually is extremely good at cleaving down Warriors of Chaos. It's fantastic. Like, even Chosen can take a considerable amount of damage if you catch them in the rear or the flank. And of course, the longer it's in combat, the more powerful it gets, which is very, very nice, especially if you get up to the max level where it gets Strider, so that it ignores all speed and combat penalties caused by terrain, and 44% damage resistance. Just great. And then I have a unit of Blood Knights, because they're pretty much the only thing that the Vampire Counts really have as an answer to big scary things like Dragon Ogre Shaggots, besides Terrorgeist, but Terrorgeist are a little less reliable in my opinion. And then back here, I have my battery. A lot of people seem to have thought I forgot him, but I did not. If you look at him here, he's actually completely naked. The only thing he has is the Forbidden Rod. So he costs like 300 or 400 points, and his job is just to sit back here and spam the Forbidden Rod. So he takes damage, but he grants me a lot of magical power. Usually you can get Forbidden Rod off somewhere between 3 and 4 times before he'll start crumbling and just die. But it gives you quite a bit of Winds of Magic. So it's great when you're using a single caster like Kimmler, who does not have Arcane Conduit. It's kind of a must, actually. So it allows you to have tons of Winds of Magic, so you can just get off all the necessary buff spells. Because as you can see, the only spells I brought was Invocation of the Heck, Raise Dead, and Van Hale's Dance Macabre. And of course I've got Krell, Cloak of Misted Shadows, so I can be nice and tanky, and then the Chaos Tomb Blade, which provides healing and resurrects dead combatants so long as Kimmler's fighting. Also gives a melee attack buff. And if I'm not fighting, then my Master of the Dead ability will be healing anyway. So no matter what Kimmler is doing, he's healing, which I really, really like. Alright, and then for my opponent, he has 4 units of Marauder Horsemasters, a Death Wizard with a damage resistant scroll and Spirit Leech, a Firecaster with a damage resistant scroll and Fireball and Flaming Sword, then a Chaos Lord on a dragon with the Pendant of Slanesh, Foe Seeker, and Standard Die. And then he's got the rest of his army hidden in the forest back there. So let's hop into it. So the very first thing that happened in literally the first 10 seconds of this match was I looked across the battlefield and realized he had no army that I could see. They just weren't there. So I realized, oh god, he's doing that thing that people did in Warhammer 1 in multiplayer ladder, where they would take a bunch of flying characters in fast cav, hide all their infantry in a forest, and just not come out for the entire game until the clock ran out. And I was not thrilled. So the first thing I do is I immediately just beeline for the forest. Thankfully, this map has a notable forest, which of course played into how he was able to hide, but it also provides me with cover. If I can get my entire army into the forest, then there's 3 main advantages, 2 of which are basically the same. 1 and 2 is that if he uses missile attacks, or if he uses magic missiles like Fireball or Dragon Breath on me while I'm in the forest, there's a reasonable chance that the damage will be completely prevented by trees. You know, any of these spears they're throwing could accidentally hit a tree and just won't hurt me, or a Fireball may explode, detonate too early. And the second buff is that because, from what I can tell at this point, his entire army is cav or just large things, it's best for me to hide in the forest because I have a mostly infantry-heavy force. So if he comes into the forest and tries to goon me, then I have a reasonable chance of not only locking him down due to the significant speed debuff the forest provides, but it will be harder for him to like charge a Manicore or a Dragon into Kimmler and kill him because they take a significant melee attack debuff as well. So at this point, this is basically all the fight is for a little bit, is I put all of my shield units facing outward, and then here comes the first Overcast Fireball, which cuts Kimmler's health in half. Literally just butchers him. Yeah, so he uses a Dragon Breath, but I do manage to dodge it. I've already cast Invocation of the Heck on myself. In comes a Spirit Leech, which is countering it. So basically, I've got 3 healing effects on me, trying to combat Spirit Leech, because I've got the Claw of Nagash's healing, Master of the Dead healing, and then, of course, the Invocation. Unfortunately, the cooldown for Invocation is much longer than the cooldown for Fireball. So here comes another Overcast Fireball. Once again hits me, takes out half of my max HP yet again. And there's nothing I can do. I don't have any air units, I don't have any way to threaten him, I don't have a magic missile to fire back, and the Cloak of Mist of Shadow only gives me physical resistance, so the Fireball is just going to eat right through it. So at this point I realize, okay, Kimmler's pretty much boned. So I'm just going to dodge around as much as possible to make his life hard. And I went ahead and summoned Krell, and in a second you'll see me go ahead and throw down some zombies, because I'm just trying to get as many troops out as I can. I'm just trying to spam magic to get heals on all of my guys who are already taking damage. You can see here that while I was trying to dodge Kimmler around, I wasn't being completely inactive. I did send some Blood Knights after one of his units of Marauder Horsemasters and managed to catch them. And then the Black Coach I was chasing them off with, but he countercharged me, which turned out to be a little unfortunate because it gets caught and starts taking a huge amount of damage. The good news is that the longer he's in a fight like this, the stronger he's going to get. See, his second effect just triggered there, and his third effect isn't far behind. Bad news is he's going to take a ton of damage. So at this point, I am barely keeping myself alive. I have 189 health left after another Spirit Leech. Meanwhile, in the back, my Blood Knights are chasing off his Marauders into the Abyss to make sure they don't come back. I get down a zombie wave, and here's where I kind of make a stupid mistake. I really needed to get off Invocation of the Heck on this Black Coach, but when he dives in for me here, knocking me down to 156, I panic, and I overcast Invocation of the Heck right on top of myself instead of on top of the Black Coach. Like, if I had done it right here, it would have been great. But you'll see, I'm going to cast it right on top of my army, and the miscast kills me. So it wasn't even Romulandawg that killed me, I blew myself up. At this point, I do send a small advance force to start harassing these guys, because I realize that the Claw of Nagash and the Black Coach, especially with the Chilling Aura, are faster than the Marauder Horsemasters. Plus, if he's firing his ammunition into the almost dead Black Coach and the always regenerating Claw of Nagash, then I know that ammo is not going into more valuable targets like my Spearmen or my Graveguard. So I'm totally okay with this, and I'm trying to use their terror to break these guys and hopefully shatter them. However, you'll see I kind of start to over-pursue here, and I start to put a little too much distance between me and my army, and I notice, you know, this dragon and this sorcerer flying in, which is why I bothered to bring the spearmen. Back here, I think he realizes that I forgot about my Blood Knights for a little bit, so he just sort of leaves them there, and I won't remember them for a couple seconds. But I do manage some pretty serious damage on these Marauder Horsemasters, which is great. The more dead bodies, the less effective they can be. But he comes in with a charge here, and on the Black Coach to not only hold it up, but to lock it in place and try and finish it off. These two guys come down as well to try and catch the Claw of Nagash, but I kind of accidentally, sorta, managed to avoid it and just beeline for the spears. Fortunately, the Black Coach explodes due to all the pressure, but I managed to get into my spearmen and I have them brace, just so if he tried to follow me, catch them, and we go right back to the forest. At this point, I did remember my Blood Knights and have them start beelining for the forest as quickly as possible. And at this point, I'm essentially just throwing my Claw of Nagash into the forest to try and heal as much as I can on all these units that are clearly damaged. Especially trying to keep units like Krell and my degenerating zombies here alive as much as possible. So I literally am just going to bring him in and just do max healing. The Blood Knights beeline for the nearest forest so I don't get caught out by like a triple monster charge and start making their way towards the rest of my army. At this point, I realize that the only thing holding my army together in my mind is the Claw of Nagash. It's the only healing effect I have left, and if I lose it, he can literally just cycle charge me to death. Because I realize that if he gets the ability to cycle charge me to death by removing my healing abilities, then he's never going to show his army. Never. He's never going to walk out of that forest. He will only walk out of that forest if I force him into a stalemate. So at this point, I basically send my spearmen especially, and some of my grave guard out to every direction and face their shields outwards. So that if he tries to close in, I can just block him. And I send the Sternsmen on this flank because they'll regenerate the damage as well. At this point, I just try and keep the Blood Knights really close to the Claw of Nagash, so that, and Krell, so that if he does charge, I can pounce on him and hopefully do some damage. But at this point, we kind of enter a little bit of a stalemate. Not a lot happens for a bit as he's recharging his Winds of Magic. He does get an excellent Dragon Breath here because he just kind of turned around and whipped it out on me and I didn't see it in time. So I start taking evasive maneuvers, as they say, and this is a critical moment. That fireball completely misses. So he casts a fireball, blows up on the tree, doesn't do any damage. That was huge, especially because the Claw of Nagash does not have any resistance to magic. Oh no, he does. He does have 25% magic resistance. Well, that's nice at least. But he has 25% flame weakness, so they would cancel each other out in case of the fireball. But it would still do quite a bit of damage to a single target. You'll see it get clipped later, and it does a lot. So at this point, we basically just enter a standstill, and my Claw of Nagash just runs around trying to be a nuisance. He has no intention of revealing his army, and I think if we had been playing on the regular ladder, he probably would have just ran the timer out. See, so that fireball hit, and it took about a quarter of my health off. That spell is really good for how cheap it is. And it's very accurate. I wish the other magic missiles in the game were as good, especially the ones that cost more, but for some reason are way worse. But at this point, the tourney announcers, Turin and Italian Spartacus, basically told them, hey, you have to move. Like, you have to reveal yourself. So, like, you have to attack. Like, Sotek literally has no options here. You have to come out. So he finally reveals himself. Notice he's not coming to me. He's just revealing himself. So the moment I see him, I'm like, oh, finally, thank God we can actually fight. And I'm just going to beeline for him. So what I decide to do here is I basically try and keep my spearmen to the outside of my force and try to have them facing the marauders as much as possible. Because I know that while I'm moving forward, his goal is going to be to try and cyclocharge the rear of my army. Because if he can do that, it's just a bunch of free damage and he can potentially collapse some units and make it so that by the time I get over here, I'm dead. However, thankfully this forest slows these guys down enough that I'm able to progress fairly safely through. And when he does try and come in for cycle charges, I'm able to turn around and get him. And because his speed is reduced to, it's 90, oh, it doesn't show it how it's reduced by the forest, but it's reduced pretty significantly. He does get a rear charge here on the tide, but because he was coming out of a forest, it did literally nothing. Between the tide's massive health pool and their physical resistance, they literally just bounced off. And I just turned around and caught a few with the spearmen and the zombies, and I ended up killing like maybe 2 or 3 guys, but every kill counts at this point. So I just start heading out my army. I do realize the Claw of Nagash is still integral to my survival, so I keep him in the center and keep my Blood Knights right next to him. That way, if he tries to dive down prematurely on me, I can turn around and slap him for it. At this point, I do dedicate a unit of spearmen and both my zombie units to the rear guard because they're not worth anything. This spearman unit's already half dead, and zombies are just fodder. Like, that's all they're there for. So at this point, literally just using them to keep his guys away from my rear so he can't run up and start throwing spears in the back of my guys. Which, granted, thankfully these are Marauder Horse Masters and not Axe Throwers, because if they were the Axe Throwing variant, they actually would have been able to do some really considerable damage with these a couple of shots that they get kind of in the backs of my guys and stuff. But since they only have javelins, a lot of my armor is blocking that damage. But, so yeah, these guys are literally just going to hold the line here, and I start moving forward. I think I had moved forward in formation and didn't notice him moving forward, because these spearmen I brace so that they can be my backline, and I try and do the same thing here, but I accidentally moved too far forward. You see, he gets another charge in the tide, they don't even care, they just tank it. At this point, I just tell my zombies to just attack him, like, just chase him off. So I start pulling my spearmen back to make a proper rear guard, send in these grave guard, and then all the other grave guard. I start swinging the Sternsmen around the flank, that way they can be a proper nuisance. And I realize there's no way I'm going to be able to protect the Claw of Nagash from magic. So I just throw him in there, because I might as well get as much of the drain effect as I can on all these guys, because it does a pretty considerable amount of damage. So, and he comes with the dragon. The instant that dragon hits the ground, my Blood Knights are on him like hot butter. I start bringing in the skeletal spearmen as support. You see that fireball clips the Claw of Nagash, takes about another quarter of his health left. This mana core comes down, and you know, one thing I want to kind of talk about in this moment is that Manticore, Dov did a video the other day about the 5 worst monsters in Warhammer, and he said the Manticore was the worst monster. I don't agree. And the reason I don't agree is because it is the only damn monster in the game that has this horrifically aggressive charge attack. Watch this. So he's trying to go after this guy, and he just plows through my troops. And even if you're trying to dodge or run away from a Manticore, oftentimes they will just keep catching you. They are so hard to shake. They are so hard to shake on the ground. And you just can't get away from them. So between the Dragon Charge and the 2 Manticore charges and another Fireball, Claw of Nagash finally goes up. But I do manage to run the Blood Knights past his Fire Sorcerer and completely surround him, which is just great. And you can see these units are literally just chasing these Marauders around to keep them busy. So we catch his Manticore with the Blood Knights, and we start kicking ass and taking names. Meanwhile, my infantry line is holding up fairly well. We're winning on the flanks because I'm able to have a surround, which is causing leadership penalties and allowing me to do considerably more damage. So you'll notice the Spearmen are on this flank and the Sternsmen are on this flank, kicking ass, taking names. But where the Chaos Warriors have their flanks protected here in the center, these guys haven't really committed yet, but these guys are winning. And they're fighting my Grave Guard with great weapons and my regular Grave Guard, and they're just winning. We managed to break the Sorcerer of Fire. He also rear charged with the Horsemasters, but the Blood Knights just kick the shit out of him. Here, the Dragon comes in, so we call in another charge between the Spearmen and the Blood Knights, trying to do a bunch of damage. He tried to finish off the zombies and did an okay job, but we managed to break this unit, so the Grave Guard just keep filing all in. The Death Manticore, essentially, I think he dove in here to block the Blood Knights from pursuing the dragon, so he kind of suicided them to buy himself a little time, but I'm perfectly fine with that. I'll take any characters I can catch. So at this point, kind of just start bringing in the rest of my army. I should have brought my Sternsmen around the side, but I wasn't doing a really good job of focusing on them. I was just trying so hard to keep microing my Blood Knights. The instant he pulled out, I pulled out. I did not stay in combat with those halberds because I realized they would do a ton of damage to me. And might be able to kill them and turn the tides. I have no more healing, so what I've got left is it. So at this point, I bring them around the back because I see how low all this morale is, and I just go for a rear charge because I know he has to countercharge. If he lets me get off these rear charges with impunity, he's dead. So here, I have the Spearmen go ham on the Dragon, and I have the Blood Knights go ham on the Sorcerer of Death. But look how much, like, the Blood Knights start getting absolutely rocked from damage when these 2 rear charges and the halberds are swinging into me. At this point, I do manage to have the tide sort of come out and start guarding that flank to make sure those halberds can't get behind me. The Fire Sorcerer breaks here, and the Death Sorcerer kind of managed to slide away a little bit, but I don't like all the damage I'm taking, and the Dragon was disengaged from me, so I went ahead and pull out. This guy kind of runs off, and the Death Wizard is fairly well trapped. We managed to shatter this halberd unit, and his leadership is starting to look really, really shaky. So we call in another big charge with the Blood Knights, who some of them are still on the Dragon, but we're just trying to get rid of these characters, trying to break them, and finally, at long last, the Chaos leadership just snaps under the pressure, and the game is over. And what a game it was! It was incredibly stressful, and between y'all and me, I would never willingly play a match like that again. That was just terrible. If you play competitive, don't do this. This is rude. Don't do this. Like, don't do this. The only reason that game turned out entertaining is because I was a stubborn mule and hid for 15 minutes until Romulan showed himself. This is not fun to watch. You know, it was great. It only ended up being fun to watch because I did everything in my power to put up a good fight, and got lucky that his infantry corps was not very strong. But in any event, at the end of this, it was a very fun tournament. I'll say that. I enjoyed my other 2 games against Romulan very much. Unfortunately, he did manage to beat me in the 3rd round with an all-ambush or Vanguard Beastman force, which caught me very off guard. And I do not have the best instant reaction speed, and I had designed an army to deal with monstrous creatures, Morgur, and a Cygor and like Bestigors. And he brought literally nothing but Vanguard, so I was just completely unprepared, and he, through sheer luck, just managed to deploy right next to me. So like if I had been anywhere else in my deployment zone, I would have had enough time to react, but he just guessed really well, I guess, where I deployed, and he was just on my ass the second the game started. But anyway, back to this game. A crucial thing that ended up saving me this game is this Necromancer. So, for whatever reason, in the current patch of Total War Warhammer, heroes and lords provide a significant leadership or balance of power buff if they're alive. And my Necromancer, after he killed Kemmler as fast as he did, I didn't have a reason to use him. He was too far away for me to risk bringing him out of the forest, because I knew if I revealed him, he would just die instantly. And once the match was, once Kemmler died, I kind of just forgot about him, because he was literally useless, I thought. Well, it turns out that he was actually incredibly useful, because he kept my balance of power high, which allowed the rest of my army to basically avoid crumbling. Kemmler, despite the fact he died, I felt he did a fantastic job. He absorbed a ton of Winds of Magic. He ate 2 Spirit Leeches and 2 Overcast Fireballs and a Dragon Breath. That is a shitload of value, considering that he cost like, what, 1,600 points? That was a great trade in my opinion. Like, I was perfectly happy to trade that. Zombies did their job, awesome. Spear Skellies did their job, stood in the way. They absorbed most of the missile fire from these units, and they just did a fantastic job of guarding the flanks. This unit actually managed to catch one of them and did a significant amount of damage. Graveguard performed extremely well. I put chevrons on the shield variant to up their melee defense so they could just be really nice and tenacious. And they did a fantastic job just holding those Warriors of Chaos down and making sure that my Blood Knights could keep cycle charging and my Graveguard with Great Weapons could chop them up. Which both, of course, of my Graveguard with Great Weapons did a phenomenal amount of damage. This one was did not have flank support, so it actually lost to the Warriors with Halberds. But this one did have flank support and absolutely demolished them, because it was supported by the Sternsmen, who, of course, performed amazingly. They're a must-have unit. The Blood Knights, MVP. MVP the entire tournament for me. All 3 games, MVP, these guys. They did a kick-ass job. I somehow managed to keep them safe throughout the entire game because Kemmler and the Mortis Engine absorbed a ton of pressure. So by the time that the Blood Knights were all that was left, he didn't have a realistic way to deal with them because my infantry had completely overwhelmed and encircled his. The Marauder Horsemasters didn't have any armor-piercing damage, and all of these guys were fairly low armor targets that were large. So they were incredibly vulnerable to the Blood Knights. And the Blood Knights just absolutely destroyed all of them. It did a fantastic job. Black Coach, I misplayed him in the beginning. I let him get caught by those 2 Horsemaster units, and he just took too much damage. And then when I overcast that final invocation, I should have made sure it hit him as well, because it would have been really nice to have him longer than I did. But I felt good about the damage he did do. He managed to kill 16 Marauder Horsemaster, which, that's great. And then, of course, the Claw of Nakash killed a couple of Marauder Horsemasters and did a critical amount of healing. If there was a healing stat, it probably would have been hilariously high because he was just sitting there chugging away. But in any event, I hope you guys enjoyed the game. I'm intending to start putting up replays, just, you know, hopefully fun games, on a daily basis. A daily basis. They will not interrupt other forms of content, and they will just be put up whenever I finish them, somewhere between midnight and midnight of the next day. So, hope you guys enjoy these. Thanks for watching, guys, and good night.